Bleach episode 20 adapts the most amount of manga material out of all of the episodes that we have received thus far. We pick up from the post-credit scene of last week's episode, which adapts up to the end of chapter 570, where the stern writer Guana Lee confronts both Isane and Yachiru. This week's episode adapts a whopping 8.5 chapters worth of manga content, spanning from chapters 571 to 579. The episode begins with material from chapter 571 as it adapts the first 9 pages before we cut to the opening song. After the intro, the first half of the episode adapts the rest of chapter 571 all the way up until the end of chapter 573 as we reach the mid-card of the episode. The second half of the episode covers material from chapter 574 to 578 before the end credit song begins. And then lastly, we have the post-credit scene for this week, which adapts the first half of chapter 579, and thus bringing an end to Kimpachi's battle against Grammy. Because of there being so much content that is covered within this episode, there is way more streamlining and cutting of content than usual, with little to no anime only scenes this week, aside from panels being animated with more context in comparison to the manga, like where we are shown Yachiru falling down the crack that Grammy makes, or showing Isane rescue Kensei and Rose in a bit more detail when they fall from the elevated platform. Rest assured, I'm going to be covering every cut and change that has been made, and as always, I'm going to refrain from talking about any scenes that are one-to-one adapted from the manga, and I'll be solely focusing on what has been cut, changed, and added to the anime. Understandably, there is a lot to cover in this video, so without further delay, here is my manga versus anime comparison for episode 20 of Bleach's 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. The episode begins with a 1-minute scene before the intro song adapting the first 9 pages of chapter 571. Now this is where we see Yachiru and Isane continue their confrontation with Guana Lee. This encounter is streamlined with some manga panels featuring unnecessary dialogue cut from the anime, like Isane asking Guana if he is one of the stern writers. The anime decides to cut to the chase and it just has him explaining who he is. Now there are similar instances of streamlining like this throughout the entirety of this episode. Guana explaining how his shrift ability works is slightly altered in the anime, and this is so that the production team can continue with this trend of streamlining content for this episode. The anime removes a page of dialogue where Guana is rambling about how he can switch from version 1 and 2 of his power in order to attack his target while he is invisible, as well as him explaining that he can switch between both versions instantly, so even if his opponent figures out where he is attacking from, he can erase his own existence with version 2, and additional panels of where he states that his powers are like a one-sided game that he can never lose, and him exclaiming how much fun he is having are also cut from the anime. After he activates version 3 of his shrift, we cut to the opening song. Immediately after the intro song, there is a cut manga panel where Guana explains that his version 3 allows him to make his targets forget about his existence. After Isane tells off Yachiru for hitting somebody that she doesn't know, we have 3 panels of manga that are cut from the anime. They involve Yachiru stating that the individual that she had hit was probably the enemy, and this is followed by Isane continuing to scold her, saying that she shouldn't just hit people based on a hunch. In the manga, this exchange is accompanied by an internal monologue from Guana who praises Isane for telling off Yachiru. The anime skips all of this and it just adapts the panel where Yachiru describes that she had a hair-raising feeling when she had seen the individual that she had just hit. After this, we get more cut dialogue from the anime, and it's after Guana reacts to Yachiru's reasoning for attacking him. 3 subsequent panels of him thinking to himself are cut from the anime here. They involve him deducing that Yachiru attacked him instinctively, as he calls her a wild animal and that he will now hunt her down. The anime instead decides to show Yachiru looking through some belongings in order to find her Zanpakuto, as she explains the feeling of hair raising to Isane. This scene also has 1 manga panel of redundant dialogue cut from the anime, where Isane asks if this hair-raising feeling she is describing is like getting the chills, likening it to when you have a bad feeling. This is followed by Yachiru reiterating that hair-raising is hair-raising. Understandably, this didn't need to be adapted into the anime, as we continue the trend of cutting to the chase, with Yachiru continuing her explanation in the anime without all of this needless padding. After Guana lunges at Yachiru to stab her, some more panels of him inner monologuing are cut. hut, where he tells her not to get too cocky by saying that she is going to defeat him. He thinks that she can try to attack him based on instinct, but it won't matter if she is unable to land any attacks on him. We reach the end of material from chapter 571 after Yachiru activates her Shikai Sampo Kenju and she ends up striking Guana Lee. Isane's observation of Yachiru's Shikai from chapter 572 has two manga panels cut from the anime, where she compares her Shikai to Unohana and Hitsugaya's Zanpakuto, stating that Sampo Kenju is not like Unohana's Zanpakuto, where the sword transforms into a living creature, and it isn't like Hitsugaya's Zanpakuto, where a living creature is manifested via his ice. Before Guana Lee is attacked by Grammy, half a page of his dialogue is cut from the anime, where he continues to explain details about his powers, clarifying that his existence doesn't actually disappear, but rather he just focuses his spiritual pressure to shift backwards as he evades his enemies at speeds that are faster than their rate of reaction. After Grammy reveals that he has killed Kensei and Rose, Isane's reaction is streamlined in the anime in comparison to the manga, where we see her rush to them and confirm that they are in fact dead. The anime instead cuts to Yachiru striking towards Grammy, which he ends up evading. After dodging the attack, a panel is cut from the anime where Grammy asks if she is kidding, because he was able to see her attack from a mile away, stating that he was obviously going to dodge it. When Kimpachi arrives, expressing his disappointment over some kid making a racket after he had sensed Yachiru was in danger, this takes us to the end of manga material from chapter 572 being adapted into the episode. Chapter 573 is pretty faithfully adapted into the anime with little to no changes from the manga. After Kimpachi introduces himself, we see the title of the episode I Am the Edge on screen, as we are shown these amazing anime exclusive visuals of Kimpachi's weathered Zanpakuto. The end of chapter 573 brings us to the midpoint of the episode as the battle between Kimpachi and Grammy begins to get serious. The beginning of chapter 574 reveals to us several Shinigami reacting to the spiritual pressure of Kimpachi. These scenes end up being streamlined within the anime, with panels of them cheering Kimpachi's name and exclaiming that they can win the battle now being removed from the anime. When Kimpachi and Grammy are speaking about how the Sternritter was able to heal his wounds, the anime cuts some manga panels of the Shinigami watching them as they make some comments about Kimpachi's spiritual pressure. They question why was it that they were not able to sense Kimpachi's spiritual pressure before Grammy had constructed that tall platform. After Grammy summons his lava, we have some more cut manga material here, where Grammy asks Kimpachi about the lava that he has just created, revealing that he has made it using his own imagination. The anime instead removes this question as it cuts to the panel after this, where Kimpachi states that he doesn't mind illogical things as he swats the lava away. While Kimpachi is suspended in a cube of water, the anime adds an exclusive scene of Yachiru falling into the gap that Grammy creates in the ground. I do like this addition a lot, because after this scene in the manga, Kimpachi is seen to be holding Yachiru and it isn't really shown how he was able to grab her. In the anime, on the other hand, it is apparent that he had rescued her while they were trapped within the ground. After sending the trapped Kimpachi into the crack in the ground, a few manga panels of Grammy explaining his actions are cut from the anime. The cut material includes him commenting on how Kimpachi will hesitate for a moment underwater before he falls into the crack in the ground that he has prepared, then stating that he knows he will not die from being crushed alone, and this is why he had crushed him while he was underwater. The anime removes all of this and just has Grammy say that he will die slowly by being both crushed and underwater, and he plans to trap him within the ground for an hour. The anime once again here is streamlining lines from the manga just to get to the point. With there being so much material to cover in this week's episode, it is understandable that changes like this are being made. After Kimpachi breaks free from the ground, in the manga, a boulder is seen to fire towards Grammy, but he ends up imagining it away. But behind the boulder, Kimpachi suddenly appears. The anime deals with this scene very differently, however, as this brief scene involving the boulder is removed entirely, as we instead cut straight to Kimpachi lunging towards the Sternritter. When Kimpachi comments on Yachiru's bones returning back to normal, we reach the end of manga material from chapter 574. The beginning of chapter 575 is trimmed down quite a lot. In the manga, we actually have an interaction here between Askin and Pepe, where we see Askin observing Grammy and Kimpachi's fight, and he is impressed that Kimpachi is actually battling against Grammy. He asks himself, why did Yuhabak let Grammy out anyway? He is then interrupted by Pepe, who agrees with him, saying that Grammy Grammy should have stayed locked up for the rest of his life. Askin then comments on how Pepe is quite the monster himself, to which he corrects him by saying that they are both monsters. Askin then proceeds to get up and leave as he explains that he is not going to stick around and get caught up in the ridiculous catastrophe that Grammy is about to unleash. Pepe agrees with him again here, saying that they are not safe even at their current distance. Askin adds that Grammy is somebody who can do anything with his imagination, stating that it would be easier to just not have such a power. The anime completely cuts this interaction with Pepe, and it decides to rework a few of his lines from these 3 pages of the manga into this brief scene in the anime. After Yachiru leaves to get healed, 3 panels from the manga are cut. This is where Grammy says that he is surprised that Kimpachi was able to notice that her bones were no longer brittle. Kimpachi states that there is no way that he would have been able to keep his powers going uninterrupted with her. The anime removes this brief exchange, deciding to cut to Kimpachi asking him why is it that he wants to fight. The rest of chapter 575 is adapted 1-to-1 into the anime, with the material from this chapter wrapping up after Kimpachi tells him that he has made him use his hands. The anime does a fantastic job of adapting Grammy's lines of internal monologue from the beginning of chapter 576. Honestly speaking, I would take Grammy's inner monologues over Guana Lee's rambling thoughts, which were considerably trimmed down at the start of the episode. When Grammy begins to imagine himself losing, the anime removes a line of dialogue from the manga, and it's where Kimpachi comments on how he isn't feeling much resistance from Grammy. Instead, the anime cuts to him asking if he has started to imagine that he is losing. Following this, a couple of lines are removed from Grammy after he realizes what is happening. The anime cuts out a line of dialogue where he tells himself that he had almost made his own death a reality. Once again, this is streamlining of the manga material so that we just cut to the chase, because there isn't much time left of the episode and we have just under 3 chapters of material still left to cover. Episode 20 adapts the most amount of manga material out of all of the episodes that we have received thus far. When Grammy reveals that the power of his imagination has been doubled and he ends up summoning a massive meteor, which Kimpachi is more than happy enough to cut down, we wrap up manga material from the end of chapter 576. Now, the beginning of chapter 577 is trimmed down considerably, and I think that this is the most controversial omission from this week's episode. It involves several scenes of different individuals reacting to the meteor falling. In the manga, we see Bazby exclaim what on earth Grammy is doing, before we see the Soldat, Shinigami and Pepe look up at the sky. Renji is then shown to stare up and ask what is going on, as we then see Askin question if what he is seeing is even possible, as he reaffirms to himself that this is why Grammy should have stayed locked up. In the next panel, we see a Shinigami say that the barrier over the Serite will protect them, because the meteor will be obliterated before it can even enter the barrier. However, they are shocked to learn that it is too big to be destroyed by the barrier, as they then begin to panic and yell that it is coming down and they are going to die. We also see Hashward towards the end of this cut material order a few Soldat to rush and protect Yuobak, as we then see the leader of all of the Quincy watching over the battlefield while the meteor falls. Now, instead of all of these amazing reactions from these different groups of people who are essentially reacting to one of the most insane feats that we have ever seen within Bleach, the anime decides to trim down these 5 pages from the manga in order to just show us some Shinigami panicking and yelling that they are going to die. It doesn't really have the same effect in my opinion, but on the other hand, the anime does still do a great job of visually showcasing the meteor with all of the visual effects and animation on display, as it showcases the Serite barrier being destroyed and the truly large scale of the meteor which is about to destroy everything. The flashback of a baby Yachiru approaching Kimpachi has one panel cut from the anime, and it's after Yachiru curiously crawls and places a hand on Kimpachi's zanpakuto. He ends up explaining to her that this is a sword, and he asks if she is afraid of it. The anime cuts these lines of dialogue and instead has Kimpachi ask for her name. Now, the anime really excels in every aspect during the scene where Kimpachi destroys the meteor, as we see it breaking up and scattering into small pieces, followed by the mind-blowing reveal of Kimpachi's Shikai. After Kimpachi showcases his Shikai, the first page of chapter 578 is cut from the anime, and this is where we see the rubble falling from the sky, and Grammy wondering what is going on, as he asks if Kimpachi was really able to destroy the meteor with just a single swing of his blade. The rest of chapter 578 is faithfully adapted into the anime, but at breakneck speeds, as we wrap things us up with Grammy's defeat and cut to the outro song. I really didn't like how the anime depicted Grammy's body breaking apart, especially when you compare how Kubo had depicted this within the manga. As you can see, the muscle tendons tearing and the insane detail of the art, with the manga definitely being superior to the anime here. I know that it doesn't need to be one-to-one like the manga, but I would have appreciated if this anime scene was a bit more on model. After the end credits, we have the first 9 pages of chapter 579 adapted into the post-credit scene of the episode, and this is pretty much adapted one-to-one from the manga with little to no changes in the anime. Despite all of the praises that I have had for this episode, with how it got Kimpachi's Shikai right and the scale and visual effects of the meteor, I personally think that it was among some of the weaker episodes from Core 2. This may be because of a multitude of factors, including my own expectations for this episode being really high, and the insane task that the anime staff had set for themselves by deciding to adapt 8.5 chapters into one episode. The pacing did feel rushed, especially during the last 5 minutes of the episode, which had resulted in Grammy's impactful defeat from the manga not hitting the same beats in the anime version. I have praised the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime a lot over the past few weeks, so it's only fair that I call out moments where I feel like it really missed the mark. There were concerns going into this episode that it would be too fast-paced, with rumors that 8.5 chapters would be adapted into the episode. I didn't want to say too much until I had seen the episode for myself, but now that I have seen it, I think that I have valid reasons to feel like the episode was too fast-paced in specific moments, especially the last 5 minutes, and honestly it would have been great if they had spread it out this fight over at least 1.5 episodes. Grammy's defeat was supposed to make us feel something, but the anime just didn't evoke the same feelings from me that I'd felt while reading the manga. The overall defeat felt really lackluster, and then we get the post-credit scene which had the sad music playing, with Grammy speaking about his mistakes and sharing his final words. And in all honesty, I felt nothing while watching this scene. That's the best way to describe it, and maybe it is my own fault for having my expectations too high. Admittedly, I may have set myself up for failure, because I really was hoping for Grammy vs Kimpachi to be the Yamamoto vs Yuhabak fight of Core 2. I'm not saying that this was a bad episode, but it's just not what I had imagined. So what were your thoughts on episode 20 I Am the Edge? Did you enjoy the episode? Do you think that the anime did justice to Kimpachi's highly anticipated battle against Grammy? There were a lot of omissions in this week's episode because of the high chapter count that was adapted into the episode. You already know my feelings towards this week's installment of the anime, especially the ending of the fight between Kimpachi and Grammy. I just wish that they had padded the fight out over more than just one episode. Needless to say, I am still looking forward to next week's installment titled The Headless Star, as we continue with Core 2 of the 1000 Year Blood War arc anime, as we are about to hit the halfway mark of the season. In the meantime, be sure to continue the discussion in the comments, and I look forward to reading all of your thoughts, and I cannot wait to see you next week for my breakdown and analysis of episode 21, where hopefully Ichigo is going to return onto the battlefield. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of my manga vs anime comparison video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.